of Television and Radio Artists, otherwise known as SAG-AFTRA. This is the union representing 160,000 television and movie actors, voted to strike today. Screenwriters have already been picketing for over 70 days. A historic double strike that will effectively shut down Hollywood was imminent after the union representing the TV, film, and actors failed to secure a new contract with major studios by a midnight Wednesday deadline. SAG-AFTRA leaders announced overnight that its negotiating committee had voted unanimously to recommend a strike after weeks of negotiations with companies such as Netflix, Amazon, Disney, and Warner Brothers basically fell apart. The Food and Drug Administration today approved a birth control pill to be sold without a prescription for the first time in the United States. This is a milestone that could significantly expand access to contraception. Well, lawyers for former President Donald Trump filed a motion this week asking U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon to grant an indefinite postponement of his trial on charges of mishandling classified documents, citing the volume of evidence in the case and Trump's candidacy for president. Arizona's top prosecutor is ramping up a criminal investigation into alleged attempts by Republicans to overturn the 2020 presidential election results in the state by signing and transmitting paperwork falsely declaring Donald Trump the winner. President Biden today publicly smacked down and denounced Senator Tommy Tuberville for single-handedly stalling the confirmation of more than 250 senior military officers over a dispute on abortion policy. Biden accused the Alabama Republican of using a ridiculous and bizarre tactic that is jeopardizing U.S. security. Well, Taylor Swift's Eras Tour is boosting the U.S. economy. Ticket sales for Swift's concerts have been so explosive, one Federal Reserve office said the pop stars is helping fuel the national tourism industry. The central bank yesterday released its beige book in which Philadelphia Federal Reserve officials reported hotel bookings rose, showing the strongest growth since the beginning of the pandemic. And it's all thanks to Taylor Swift's show dates. The Republican-controlled U.S. House of Representatives voted to limit abortion access in the military, bowing to the right GOP leaders acceding to the demands of the ultra-conservatives to use the annual defense policy bill to lodge cultural grievances and protest continued U.S. support for the Ukraine. By a vote of 222 to 211, the House also adopted a measure to bar the military's health plan from covering gender transition surgeries, which currently can be covered only with a waiver and gender-affirming hormone therapy. Well, Democrats condemned the moves with some warning on today that they could not support the defense bill with the abortion restrictions included. You're watching and listening to Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. This is hour 2 of Areva Martin in real time, and this is the hour where we go behind the headlines and we go deep on the stories that people are talking about. And today, the biggest story that is capturing the attention of folks all over the news, including on social media, is the entertainment industry strike that now includes actors and writers. More than 300 bold name stars like Meryl Streep and Jennifer Lawrence and Quinta Brunson, they all signed a letter to negotiators emphasizing their willingness to strike and saying they are ready to make sacrifices. Now, according to some experts, the combined strike of actors and writers could cost big cities like LA and New York to lose over $60 million a day in revenue. In this hour, we're going to talk to industry experts, film critic, and a TV and film writer about what this strike means now having both actors and writers striking. What does it mean for the upcoming award shows? What does it mean for the fall season when new episodes would be coming out of your favorite shows? And what does it mean for those writers and actors who may not get paid now for months, as this strike has already been going on for writers for approximately 70 days? You may be thinking, I'm not a writer, I'm not an actor, and the strike doesn't have any relevance in my life, but you are wrong. The entertainment industry fuels so much of the U.S. economy. So this strike will have a trickle-down effect. It will have a domino effect on so many other industries in this country, and eventually could thwart what we have seen in terms of the rebound of the economy. Just yesterday, we were talking about the gas prices, how they were coming down and how grocery prices were falling, that the inflation rate in this country was falling. Might this strike, this combined writer and actors strike, cause the economy to spiral out of control yet again? When we come forward, talk about those issues and more right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest spot, shot with a rest spot, shot with a rest spot.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Bounce is back.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head. Yeah.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star.
We are back, and this is the second hour of Areva Martin in Real Time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. And in this hour, we are talking about the entertainment industry strike with entertainment industry Insiders. Joining me in this hour is Camille Tucker. She is a film and TV writer. She co-wrote The Clark Sisters, the First Ladies of Gospel. She has sold scripts to big studios, including Sony, Universal, Fox TV, and Disney. She's been nominated for 5 NAACP Image Awards and is currently working on several projects that I imagine have been and maybe continue to be disrupted by the strike. And also in this hour, Reggie Ponder is here. Reggie is a film critic extraordinaire. You can check him out and hear him every day on 91.1 FM in Chicago. And he is a frequent guest of the show. Welcome back, Reggie. And thank you so much, Camille, for joining me today. Can't really turn on the television, pick up a paper, or go to your social media without there being some reporting on the SAG-AFTRA strike, and now the 160,000 TV and film actors joining the writers. Reggie, were you expecting this to happen? Were you expecting the actors to join the writers on strike?
I actually was. There was reports that in June, the rank and file had already voted about 98% to authorize the strike. And if you listen to some of the strong words from Fran Dreiser about how they weren't really negotiating in good faith, you were hearing this all along, even though Fran was being optimistic. And then there was some hope that because DGA, the Directors Guild of America, that they did settle, that might help on this whole writers thing, but I expected it. The other thing that I just want to mention is that there were reports coming out of the Hollywood Reporter that they wanted to starve out the writers. So some executive basically said, let them starve. We'll wait until they lose their homes. So if you are working and dealing with these kind of people, this is no surprise. And I wasn't surprised.
Yeah, I saw that headline too. It was really harsh. It was a pretty brutal headline, but pretty much saying what you said, paraphrasing that there was no interest on the part of big studio executives to end the strike that has already been going on for 70 days for writers. So not very encouraging when you think about how employers and big corporations and these big executives who we know make millions and millions and millions of dollars are thinking about the people that help them make the millions and millions of dollars. Camille, you've been in this business. You have had successful projects. You have worked with some of the big studios. You got a bunch of projects in development. How has the writers' strike impacted you personally and then some of the peers that you work with?
Yeah, well, we're all fired up and we're all in it, until the end. Of course, it's affecting everyone. I mean, I'm blessed because at a point in my career, I went into higher education. So I'm also a professor. So I teach screenwriting as well. So I do have, other things that I do. And the writers, some write for a podcast or they're writing in other mediums. But there's also a strike fund, and the Writers Guild was very intentional, and they had a plan for this. So $25 million strike fund to assist writers who are, not working right now. So, and that fund, I think, is double what they had in the 2007 to 2008 strike. So there was a plan in place to be able to take care of the writers, but I don't feel that people are sort of, feeling discouraged or depressed or anything. I feel a lot of energy. We just had the HBCU reunion strike on just this week at Warner Brothers. And I mean, there was the alphas were out, the deltas were out, and all the Divine Nine and step shows. And there was a lot of positivity there. So there have been different strike days. They've been doing things to mix it up. There was a karaoke day. There was a pride day. There was just a lot of different themes, a bake-off day. But, it's a serious matter. But we've been doing things to keep the morale up, and people are energized. They're in it to the end.
Are you surprised at all, Camille? I'm sure you saw that headline that Reggie and I are talking about, and probably others like that. If that sentiment is true, from that article. Does that surprise you that the executives are taking the position that they're taking?
I was surprised by that. But first of all, just the timing of the article and the fact that that headline came out. Some in the WGA, which I'm a member of, were saying, well, this kind of headline is created to create divisiveness and division. But if anything, it created more solidarity, and it made us all hope and believe and just feel strongly that SAG was going to join with us, because we initially said that they're not even bringing anything reasonable to the table. The fact that we couldn't even negotiate. So it also made it say SAG was agreeing with us to say it wasn't just the WGA who was saying we can't negotiate with them. It's also SAG. Like, they're not bringing anything reasonable to the table. They're not coming part way, halfway, or trying to make a deal. And so I think that this had to happen. And I think most writers in the Writers Guild are elated and excited that SAG has joined with us, because together we are very strong.
Right. And so, Reggie, help everyone understand what's the big issue. So, like, what were the issues that SAG-AFTRA, 160,000 actors and, film and television believe were not, what demands did they have from the studios that were not being met?
Yeah, the first thing to know is that there is the landscape has changed, and so what Fran is saying is that if the landscape has changed, we can't continue to work on some old antiquated deals that we've had before. It has changed, and the contracts need to change, and that just makes sense. That just makes common sense for somebody who just might be a layman and say, "Hey, what are the real issues?" The landscape has changed. So if the landscape has changed, we should change along with it. Now, those issues specifically are, one is just compensation. And Camille can talk about this as well as it relates to the writers. I mean, compensation, can we get paid a fair wage so we can live? Because a lot of these folks do have extra jobs. They're doing other things. And so when you talked about the high profile actors, but they're these middle actors who are doing work and voice work or whatever, and they'll tell you they cannot make a living based on the wages that they have. The next thing is this whole issue of streaming residuals. That's the new landscape, is that how has streaming changed how people got paid? Are getting paid, and it has really changed, and it's lopsided and it's unfair. And then this whole thing about generative AI being able to use almost likenesses and doing voice work and doing all kinds of things that actors and writers do. Hey, how am I protected? Are we going to allow the machines to really take over and do the things? So those are some of the big things. But I also talk about the pension and healthcare, those regular issues that every worker is trying to figure out. Can I get the right kind of healthcare? What's going to happen from a pension perspective? So there's a whole host of issues, but those are the things that are major, if you will.
Yeah, go ahead, Camille, go ahead.
I was just going to paint a picture a little bit for television for the writers. So let's go back to the days of network TV. Used to be when you had your favorite shows on CBS, NBC, ABC, and the other networks, 22 episodes. So writers were working like 40 weeks out of the year, and they were making a professional career, professional living out of that. Now that we have the streamers in the game, and what Reggie said, that has really changed the landscape. So now, obviously, when you see streamer shows, sometimes there's 6 episodes or 8 episodes. So you don't need writers to work 40 weeks. And then also sometimes they have one person writing all of those episodes. So in addition to what Reggie had also mentioned, the writers wanted a longer guarantee for a longer time so that it wouldn't be having a showrunner who's staying there the whole time and through production and just the writer's room just there during the writing and then they're gone. And then also a way to limit the size of the rooms, not limit, but to have a minimum for the size of the writers' rooms so that it wouldn't just be one person writing all of the episodes. So those are some of the other additional issues to the writers.
I saw this residual piece. This was a writer, I think, a writer that writes for Abbott Elementary, talked about the residuals when shows are showed on other networks, so they're the reruns. And I think she said for an episode that is shown on a network, the residual check might have been like $13,000. And the residual when that show is, or a comparable show on a streamer, Reggie, she said that check was $700.
That's right. And it just changed. And what's really interesting is that people are watching these streaming shows. So how are you basing this? And one of the things that Fran talked about is that, and we hear this in all industries.
And Fran Drescher is the president of SAG-AFTRA.
Sorry. Right. It is that the CEOs are getting these mega massive deals, and you're seeing these other folks who really make it work, who make this industry work, not being able to make a living. I will also say is that this whole thing of 160,000 members, you talked about the impact that's going to have, not just on Hollywood, it's going to have on everything. Think about the catering services and the people who make clothing and all of the other stuff. So the residual effect of this is going to be something. In the last writer's strike was about 2.8 billion in today's dollars. That was just the writer's strike. Right. And you gave a number. You said, I think 60 million a day. I think that was. So it's going to impact so much. So it is really huge. And if people are sitting at home thinking that this will not impact them, they're absolutely wrong, because the shows that they're going to be able to watch are going to start to be different. The studios also did what the Writers Guild did, is that they knew that this was coming, and they stockpiled their reality shows. So they're ready to put these reality shows out here and run them until, I guess something happens there. So.
Yeah. And one of the things, Camille, let me just say, people may be thinking, oh my God, Meryl Streep, Jennifer Lawrence, they hear these big names and it's kind of hard for people to have empathy for them because they think they're wealthy and they think they have everything. And they don't think of folks who work in the entertainment industry as workers in the sense that you may think of when you hear that hotel workers are going on strike, or truck drivers are going on strike, or, the folks that flip burgers at McDonald's are going on strike. Help folks understand, and I think Reggie has alluded to it to a certain extent, that, obviously they're the people at the top making hundreds of millions of dollars, but the industry is really, dominated by folks who are not making the mega dollars in the same way that we see with sports and some other, industries where there is this perception that everybody that steps foot in that industry is a millionaire. So how do you get folks to appreciate that writers like you had to go get another job as a professor and others have to get other jobs? Because I think there may be a sense that this, Reggie, that this doesn't matter to me because, one, I'm not in the industry, and because those are a bunch of rich folks who are whining.
Yeah, well, they're trying to make this a gig economy, where writers have to go from job to job, and it's like you're a contract worker. But as I kind of mentioned before, writers were able to make their living. I mean, thank God we do have health insurance and pension through the Writers Guild, and that was something that was fought for. But right now, think of the baby writers, the young writers. And right now, it's been a great time for Black people and BIPOC people and the LGBTQ community. A lot of new writers are getting in. This has been somewhat of a golden era of seeing people of color getting their shine, but those new writers that are coming in, they're not having those 22 episodes. They're not being trained to be producers and being on set and having that where this is a professional career. And let's just think, what if writers were eventually replaced by AI? It actually makes it worse.
Artificial intelligence. Give us an example of how they could use artificial intelligence to replace a writer.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that, which is one senior writer in a room, like a head writer who's been around for a long time, and having the artificial intelligence spit out some script, and then having the human being bring the human element to it. Because let's face it, AI has not been through divorce, has not seen a child be born, has not, experienced what it is to have grief. So AI cannot do that. It can just grab, from the internet and spit something out. So they need writers to bring the human element, but they don't want a staff of writers to do it. They just would have like one or two writers in the room. And then that takes away jobs from all of the other writers to come. So that's why it's existential, because this has to do with the future of writing and the future of writers, the writers that will be in the next generation.
Yeah, and you're not just the artificial intelligence for the writers, Reggie, you touched upon this. They now can use your likeness, your face, your image, and use artificial intelligence for voice and for sound, and even, maybe replace actors. So it's not just the writers, that AI is coming for. Actors themselves also have a lot to be worried about and concerned about as it relates to advances in artificial intelligence. When we come forward, I want to talk about the impact on the award show, since the Emmy nominations were just dropped, and some of these big movies that are due to premiere in the next week or two. What does this mean? As we now know, 160,000 actors are joining writers and striking. And we have these big executives at the network saying, we'll starve them out. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4, only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley. Weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station. KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
I'm young, gifted, and black. At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Your black. Your black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
We are back and we are talking about today's breaking news, and that is 160,000 actors, both TV and film, have joined the writers who've been on strike for 70 days, and now they too are striking against work conditions, pay, and other issues, mainly the changing landscape in the entertainment industry. I'm joined in this hour by Camille Tucker. She is a TV and film veteran writer. She has multiple credits, including having co-written The Clark Sisters, the First Ladies of Gospel. She sold scripts to all the big studios in town, and she's currently developing a pilot with 50 Cent and working on the biopic for Gladys Knight. And also Reggie Ponder, a film critic extraordinaire, someone you could hear him and his commentary on films at 91.1 FM in Chicago. All right, Reggie, so Emmy nominations dropped on Wednesday. The Emmys are due to air in September. What does this strike do for that award show and others that would be naturally coming up as we move into the fall?
Well, Areva, you previewed this. This is I can't even stress how huge this is that both the writers and SAG and AFTRA are on strike, because this impacts almost everything, and then it actually impacts my job. So I can't interview any of the stars for these movies now because at 12 o'clock tonight, that's done. If you're doing press junkets or you're promoting your movie, SAG-AFTRA sent out guidelines to say, look, you can't do, these are all the things you can't do. And there's so many of them that, I mean, it's basically that you just can't work. There's principal on camera work that you can't do. There's principal off camera work that you can't do. There's promotion and publicity stuff that you can't do. Then your agents can't do negotiations and things of that nature. So as it relates to the Emmys, if they don't get something done soon, then there will be no show for that. I'm a member of the Critics' Choice Awards. We're pushing back a number of our award shows. I know a number of places are pushing back theirs. The Toronto Film Festival is really concerned because they shut down Toronto and make it a big thing with all the stars and things of that nature. So they'll only be showing movies and having no stars. So it really does. That impacts the economy of those places as well. So Toronto, the film festival, people go to see the stars. And so you won't be able to do that. So again, it's huge, and it affects so many areas and those shows. Yeah.
Yeah, that's major. You're right. This is significant in more ways than one. They're calling it, Camille, the largest labor action in Hollywood since 1960. And Teamsters obviously have weighed in. The International Brotherhood of Teamsters, one of the largest unions in the U.S., said that they stand in solidarity with the Hollywood actors and writers. They say it's greedy studios have brought this strike on themselves. These multi-billion-dollar corporations, including Amazon, Netflix, Disney, and Apple, are only successful because of the hard work of union members. They said workers in this industry are united. They are demanding to be paid their fair share of the wealth they generate for the studios. Teamsters are proud to stand with them in the fight and will continue honoring picket lines. So that goes to the point Reggie made about the other industries. I can recall myself going to a movie theater, and you think about folks that work in the movie theaters. Many of them are members of unions as well. And if the folks on strike are picketing that particular movie theater, a lot of folks won't cross that picket line and go into that movie theater. So, Camille, this is, again, could be potentially devastating, not just to individuals who've got to pay their bills, but, what happens after this strike? So, if this goes on, as a writer, you've already been on strike 70 days. How long, how much content? Because what we keep hearing is that the studios banked content. So either reality content or whatever, they had writers writing so that they could have content ready. What's your estimate of how long this strike could go and there still be content to, air?
Well, let me just say, first of all, this is huge. I know that the last time the actors, they striked in 1960 and then 1980. And I think that in 80 was when the actors finally got their health care and their pension. So that was big. And then there was another strike that I think only lasted like 18 hours because they knew that you really can't make anything without the actors. So as Reggie said, I mean, it doesn't matter if they have stockpiled scripts, because if the actors can't show up on set, what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. And people talk about reality TV, but I want to say something on that. When it was more of the networks, when you had the ABC, CBS, and NBC and Survivor became big, I don't think people watch reality as much on the streamers. And now that the model has changed, there are certain reality shows that people like on streamers, but I don't think it's going to have the same impact. So yeah, I do think that's different. But also, let's say, I really don't think that this strike is going to go much longer now that the actors have joined, because there is too much of a loss at stake. Some people have said they think it's going to go till Labor Day, which, woo, great celebration for Labor Day. We finally figured it out on Labor Day. But sometimes I'm hearing the word on the street is that it would go to Labor Day or before that. But I really don't think the studios can afford this. The Emmys, the actors won't be able to show up and the writers won't be able to write the show. There's brilliant writers who write those jokes and write the show every year. So what are they going to do? Some people talked about the last, I think it was a BET Awards where they didn't have writers, and they were like, wow, that was really different than any other year. So the same thing could happen to the Emmys. I think the studios are now going to be incentivized. I don't think this strike is going to go on too long.
What about, I hear what you're saying, Camille, and I'm just looking at some of these articles about the strike, and some folks are saying, Reggie, that the networks are diversified, that they have other sources of income like Disney. They're not just depending on their shows. They have theme parks and, Apple TV has, everything that controls our freaking lives. So they're saying the business model is different. And companies can wait this out in a different way today because of how these companies have, entered into these mergers, how they are diversified in terms of their revenue stream. What do you make of that argument?
Yeah, I'm hopeful that Camille is right, that it won't last long. But when you listen to some of the comments from Bob Iger from Disney just recently, it's not really promising. He's saying things like that they're not being reasonable. This is a bad time for them to do this. That they're basically, I'm paraphrasing. So, but basically saying that why are they doing this kind of thing? And I don't think that this makes any type of sense whatsoever. Maybe that's bravado, but Bob is not known for bravado. He buys and sells at will. So to your point about, having some diversification, there is that for many of these companies. I think where Camille might be right here is that it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to lose if we're talking about $60 million a day, and at some point it is going to hurt your business. And so what are you going to do there? On the Disney front, if you read some recent articles, Bob is thinking about selling entities like,
ABC, maybe.
ABC, Hulu, and those types of things. So even though, and getting more into the streaming business so he can compete better with companies like Netflix. So I believe I'm probably like a 55%er on Camille that it won't last long, but I got that 45% saying if there are other executives like Bob Iger, we better watch out.
Well, this article says to add to what you're saying, Apple is a $3 trillion, not billion, $1 trillion company. And this commentator says, I don't know what they spend on TV and movies, but if they have a new iPhone out, will Apple even care how long the strike lasts? Stay with us on KBLA Talk 1580. More on the entertainment strike that now impacts over 160,000 of your favorite actors and entertainers. We'll be back right on KBLA.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
I'm young, gifted, and black. At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Reggie, I'm reading some of the proposals that have been made by the studios. Listen to this one. One of the studio's proposals call for background actors to be scanned and paid for a day's work in exchange for the rights to their image and digital likeness relinquished for the rest of eternity in any project they want with no consent and no compensation.
Come on.
That's a proposal by one of these studios.
Come on. So again, Fran Drescher's like, we are being victimized by a greedy, very greedy entity. She said, I am shocked by the way the people that we've been in business with are treating us. Now, when you say you're shocked by the people that are across the table, that these people are greedy, and then she says, we're not going to take it anymore. We are just not gonna, does that sound right? That's saying that you scan me and you can use me in animation, you can use me as a real person, you can just use me in perpetuity. And Samuel Jackson said in some interview some time ago, he was like, whenever he sees perpetuity in a contract, he just scratches that out right away.
Yeah.
Who would do that? Bob, would you do that, Bob Iger? Would you say, you can use my likeness in perpetuity? No. So you wouldn't do it. So don't put that in the contract for some other people.
Yeah, I mean, it's so oppressive to say you get paid for that day and probably fairly low wages for that day. And now they have your image, likeness, and they can use it without your consent. You may not even, they don't even have to notify you. You could be watching TV one day and there goes your image and likeness and you've got no compensation for it. Okay, so Camille, Reggie's not as optimistic as you are. He's saying, listening to some of these executives, they're talking tough, and that's what happens in negotiations, right? Each side has to keep their poker face on, has to appear as if they're prepared to go the distance. But I do have some concerns. Again, I know you said there's not enough content in the bank to fill these hours, but these streaming sites seemingly they could just keep that same content, play those same shows over and over and over again.
Well, they could play the same. And by the way, just adding this on Bob Iger, who just signed a contract for $27 million a year. So come on, Bob. What about
right.
equity here? But okay, so you don't have actors that can show up, though, you can have, let's say a studio has 10 scripts that are ready, but the directors can show up, but writers can't do any last minute rewrites. And then whatever those actors, be it Viola Davis, Matt Damon, whoever, the big actors are that you want, they're not going to be able to promote the projects and they're not going to be able to act in them. So they are over a barrel to some extent. They can do the reality as they did before, but like I said, I don't feel that the appeal for reality is as strong on the streamers as it once was on network TV. Mm-hmm. So what difference does it make if you have all these scripts you're in the bank? If you don't have actors to show up, you're going to use union actors who aren't as talented. And then if those actors act in them, they won't be able to join the union in the future because they will have crossed the line. So they're not going to want to do that if they're talented young actors.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know, Reggie, you talked about actors and the reality. So the reality for those reality actors is that they're making a decision. And that decision, if they do, as Camille said, act in any of those, projects while the strike is going on, they are precluding themselves from joining the union at a later point in time. So people have to make that decision about, where they want to be. What are you thinking, though, Reggie?
Want to pay their subscriptions for these? I mean, I've got 10 of them, but if it's just going to be reruns and just, things that you're not interested in. I saw a thread today on 50s like saying, oh, I want my Power, I want my Kanan, I want my,
yeah, I'm thinking about my shows I was hoping would be back in the fall with, new episodes. Ain't happening, obviously, because those shows would need to be in production now if they're going to be airing in September and all production is shut down. Reggie, what about these big movies coming out? Barbie, Oppenheimer coming out. What's going to happen with those big movies? They already had the premiere. I know they had Barbie's premiere.
Yeah. I mean, you alluded to a little earlier, is that there are movies that are premiering right now. People are in London for these certain movies, and some of these actors left as soon as the strike was announced. They were like, "Oh, no, I'm not going to stay, even though you moved up the premiere hour so I could be here. We on strike, dude. We'll see you later." So it's just going to impact. It's going to impact the promotion of these movies. It might not impact the, for instance, Mission Impossible is out, and so this will be the big weekend for that. It might not impact that at all. People will probably go see it and do that type of thing, but all these other movies that really do need some kind of promotion, because generally who would be like, I want to go see Oppenheimer? It needs some promotion. People need to know what is that about and those types of things. So it's going to impact the promotion of the movie. It's going to impact my ability to write about the movie, because the only thing I can now write about is what I see, as opposed to having spoken to some of the people. It just has a reverberations, as you talked about, throughout the industry, from a writing perspective, an acting perspective, critique perspective, all of that.
Camille, we often see in these strikes, like I'm thinking about the Los Angeles Unified School District strike. The mayor of Los Angeles stepped in, played a critical role in helping bring, I think it was like the cafeteria workers, the custodians, the folks that work to keep schools going were on strike for better wages. They weren't even making living wages. And she stepped in. Is there a person that you think would be like the person, that could step in and negotiate in a way that could bring both of the sides together?
I love Mayor Karen Bass, but I think it is going to be very difficult because of the stance that these studio heads are taking, that there's just one particular person. I think it's actually going to be them, and being very sobered up in the reality. They might have even thought that the actors weren't going to strike. But I want to add to that, because you asked a little earlier about how this affects other people, just to paint a picture. This is not just the writers, okay? Obviously, in a writer's room, there used to be a model where there was like 10, 12 writers in a room. So that will affect them. But it also is the costume designers that are typically on set, the Teamsters, just people are saying that name, but let's say who they are. They're the ones that drive the trucks, all the transportation trucks, and they're so strong. And they're so supportive of us, and we're with them as well. But there's custodians that work in studios that jobs could be impacted. Sometimes it's the people that work in those service positions. There's people that make meals and cater. There's the makeup artists. And as Reggie said earlier, the set designers and the costume designers, the hair people. And one thing is that, a lot of times the folks of color, we're the first people that get impacted on these. And as I had mentioned before, we were kind of getting a moment with content creators like Kenya Barris and Issa Rae and Lena Waithe and Ava DuVernay, and, who were kind of a younger generation that got lifted up by Mara Brock Akil and Felicia Henderson and Sarah Finney Johnson, and so many of those who had those shows like in the 90s, and then this new wave. But we will be affected. Just think about that. The affirmative action came down, and the next day, 4 Black women executives, or it was struck down. And then the next day, 4 Black women executives that were DEI executives at the studios all got let go. So this is a serious existential issue.
Well, we know when America catches a cold, Black folks get pneumonia. So we know Black folks are going to, suffer disproportionately, whether they're actors or writers or costumers, hair and makeup, all of those professions that work in entertainment. I'll ask you, Reggie, the question I asked Camille about, is there a person? So some folks say in the old days when there was a strike, folks would go to Lou Wasserman because he was like the Zeus in the entertainment industry. And they say there's no Zeus in this business anymore. Is there anyone that you can think of that you think, could come in and play savior and bring the sides together?
I don't, because I think since the landscape has changed so drastically and everybody's scrambling on the streaming end, if you look at what all the companies are doing, everybody has a streaming service. Camille kind of said, hey, I got about 10 of them. Every company has a streaming service, and they're out there fighting for that streaming dollar. And I just think that fragments the market so much that it really does have to be these executives from these companies all saying, you know what, let's come together and let's try to figure out how to make this work, even though we're competing like hell against each other to be the #1 streaming service that there is out there.
Well, we are out of time. Thank you so much for your insights, Camille Tucker, again, the TV and film writer who is feeling optimistic about the strike. And thank you so much, Reggie Ponder, film critic extraordinaire. You can check him out on 91.1 FM in Chicago. We obviously are going to follow this story, and hopefully Camille is right. And by Labor Day, we will be celebrating because folks will be back to work doing what they love doing. The next voice that you hear on KBLA Talk 1580 is Robin Ayers and the Raw Report. So don't touch that dial.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest spot.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.